I stopped believing in signs the year my father died, so when the bell over the pharmacy door rang twice. Once for the wind, once for a man who stood there a full 10 seconds before stepping inside. I told myself it meant nothing at all. "I'll be right with you," I called, not looking up from the blister pack I was counting. 30 tablets, row of 6 again. Losing count meant starting over, and starting over was the only kind of second chance this job ever gave me. "Take your time, Nurse Callahan." The voice stopped my hands cold. Nobody called me that outside the hospital, and even inside it, hardly anyone used my last name. Dana to the doctors, Hon to the patients, Callahan only on my badge, and on discharge papers I signed 100 times a month without reading the names attached to them. I looked up. He'd put on weight, the good kind, the kind that fills back into a person's face after a body's been fighting itself. His hair had grown out from the buzzed short cut the surgical team had given him. But I knew the eyes. Nobody forgets a man's eyes when she spent 3 weeks watching them struggle to focus on a whiteboard that said what day it was. "Illy Foster," I said, and my own voice came out steadier than I felt, which is a skill they don't teach you in nursing school so much as beat into you one bad night at a time. "You're supposed to be in Tulsa." "I was." He had his hands jammed in his jacket pockets like a kid outside a principal's office. "I moved back in June." "That's a long way to come for a refill." I meant it as a joke. It came out sounding like a challenge. "I'm not here for a refill." He glanced at the little line forming behind him. Mrs. Petrosky with her blood pressure meds, tapping her foot with the specific impatience of a woman who has outlived 2 husbands and does not intend to wait for anyone else's business. "Can I?" "Is there a time you get a break?" "I want to tell you," I said, "no. I want to tell you I was the kind of woman who protects the wall between her work self and the rest of her, the way we're trained to, the way you have to be when you spend your days elbow deep in strangers' worst weeks. But the truth is messier than that, the way most true things are." Eli Foster had been my patient on the neuro step-down unit 11 months earlier, after a car went through a guardrail on the interstate and put him in a coma for 6 days. I was the nurse who read to him from a paperback thriller I found in the family lounge because his sister said his physical therapist swore hearing a familiar voice helped, even if he couldn't answer. I was the one standing in the doorway 3 weeks later when he finally strung together a full sentence, and it was, "God help me. Is the redhead still reading to me? Or did I dream that?" I laughed so hard I had to leave the room. His sister told me later he asked about me every single day after that, in the careful, sideways way people ask things when they're not sure they're allowed to want them. I never gave him my number. That's a line you don't cross, not while somebody's chart still has your initials on it, not while somebody's whole world is narrowed down to a hospital bed and a call light and whoever happens to walk through the door with kindness in her hands. I told myself once he was discharged, once the connection between us was nothing but professional distance and a folder in medical records, it wouldn't matter anymore. I told myself I wouldn't think about him. I was wrong about that second part for longer than I'd like to admit. "I get lunch at 1, I said. "Diner on the corner. I have 40 minutes. He smiled like I'd handed him something breakable and precious. "I'll take 40 minutes. I rang up Mrs. Petrosky's prescription with hands that weren't quite mine, and the whole rest of the morning moved like weather building on the horizon. You can feel it coming. You just don't know yet if it's going to break the heat or ruin the picnic. At the diner, he ordered black coffee, same as I did, and for a minute, neither of us said much of anything. There's a particular kind of awkward that comes from knowing someone's body better than you know their favorite color. I'd charted his oxygen levels. I'd held his hand through a panic attack at 2 in the morning when the machine started beeping and the whole world narrowed down to getting him breathing steady again. I did not know if he took sugar in his coffee. He didn't. "I looked you up," he admitted finally, turning the mug in slow circles. "Not in a creepy way. I mean, a little bit in a creepy way, I guess, but I asked my sister first, and she said you still worked at Sunridge, and I drove 11 hours because sitting in Tulsa thinking about it wasn't getting me anywhere. 11 hours is a lot of thinking time. I used most of it deciding whether this was insane." He looked at me straight on, no flinching, the way he used to look at the wall clock during those first confused days, like if he stared hard enough the world would agree to make sense again. I kept landing on yes, and then getting back in the car anyway. Here's the part I've turned over in my mind more times than I can count, the part I still don't have a clean answer for. Was it right, what I felt sitting across from him? Something warm and unguarded loosening in my chest for the first time in longer than I wanted to admit? Or was I only the last steady hand he remembered from the worst month of his life, mistaking gratitude dressed up as feeling for the real thing? I've seen it happen. Patients fall for the person who got them through the dark, the way you'd fall for anyone who pulled you out of water you were sure would take you under. It fades, usually. It's supposed to fade. Illy! I made myself say it plainly, because plain was the only honest way I knew how. 11 months ago, you didn't know what day of the week it was. I fed you applesauce through a straw. That's not exactly the foundation people build a life on. I know. He didn't look away. That's why I waited. I didn't come find you in October or December or March. I thought about it every single one of those months, and every time I told myself, not yet, that's the accident talking, that's the fear talking, give it time and see if it's still there once the fear's gone. He spread his hands like he was laying something out on the table between us, plain as the coffee cups. It's been almost a year, Dana. It's still there. If anything, it just got heavier, realer. I'm not the guy who needed you to survive anymore. I got healthy on my own, back home, away from you completely, and I still drove 11 hours. I sat with that for a long moment, the diner noise humming around us, some trucker 3 booths down laughing too loud at his own joke. I thought about all the nights since March when I'd catch myself wondering, out of nowhere, whether Eli Foster ever made it back to his job, whether he still got that hitch in his left hand when he was tired, whether the sister with the kind eyes had gotten married like she'd talked about. I told myself that was just a nurse's habit, caring about outcomes, wanting the story to end well for the people who passed through your hands. I'm less sure now that was ever the whole truth. Maybe you've had a version of this. Someone who found you at the exact wrong moment, and you had to decide whether wrong moment meant never or just not yet. I don't think there's one right answer to that. I think some people would tell me to run and mean it kindly. I think other people would tell me I'd be a fool to let a man drive 11 hours twice and not at least find out. I don't know which one of them is right. I only know what I did. 40 minutes isn't much, I said, but I get an hour on Saturdays. His whole face changed, the way a room changes when somebody finally opens a window in it. I can wait for Saturday. You drove 11 hours. I think you can survive 4 days. I survived worse, he said, and there was something quiet and unguarded under the joke, something that made my throat tight in a way I hadn't expected and didn't entirely trust. I walked him out to his car afterward, back past the pharmacy window where Denise was watching us over the top of her readers with an expression I chose not to interpret. The August sun was doing that thing it does in late afternoon, turning everything gold and a little unbearable to look at directly. Eli stood by his car door a second too long, like he was deciding whether to say something else, and settled instead for what it's worth. The book you read me. I bought a copy. Never finished it. I think I'm saving the ending for when I see you again. I still don't know, watching his taillights pull out of the lot, whether I was doing something brave or something foolish, whether gratitude wearing love's clothes ever really becomes the thing itself, or whether I'd spent 11 months missing a man I had no business missing and was only now admitting it. What I know is that I went back inside, finished counting that blister pack, 30 tablets, row of 6 again. And for the first time since March, I didn't lose count once.